Night. Snow hangs in the conifers like thick wool. A convoy of trucks crawls along a half-made road into the eastern foothills of the Ural Mountains. Headlights are hooded. Guards ride the bumpers with rifles across their chests. The drivers have orders not to ask questions. Near the end of the road, a fence appears. Fresh posts, barbed wire, sentry lights, wooden watchtowers latticed with frost. Beyond the fence, scaffolding, steam, and the skeletal frames of buildings rising out of a frozen swamp. Men and women unload crates stenciled with nothing but numbers. A foreman in a quilted jacket and fox fur hat reads a list from a sheet marked simply Plant Number 817. There is no name on the map because the city does not exist. It will be called many things over the decades. Chelyabinsk-40, Chelyabinsk-65, Ozersk, but never by its real name to the outside world. In 1945, with the ruins of Berlin still smoking, Stalin orders the creation of a secret metropolis whose job is not to design a bomb, but to forge its heart, the plutonium core that will arm the Soviet Union with nuclear weapons and reset the balance of world power. This is the story of Stalin's secret city. The decision begins far from the Urals, in offices where doors close softly and telephones never ring. Reports arriving from the United States describe Hiroshima and Nagasaki destroyed by weapons no army can stop. For Stalin, the implications are stark. Without nuclear parity, every Soviet factory, every rail yard, every new city is a target under someone else's umbrella. The remedy is speed. He puts Lavrentiy Beria, the feared chief of state security, in charge of the entire atomic program. Beria is not a physicist. He is a manager, a disciplinarian, and, to those under him, a constant threat. But he understands logistics and secrecy. He will get the materials, the people, and the protection. If the designers at KB-11, later known as Arzamas-16, deep in the forests of central Russia, will draw the blueprints for weapons, Beria will create the place where the fuel will be made. The site selection team moves east, looking for water, electricity, rail access, and distance. Distance from prying eyes, distance from borders, distance from the ordinary rules of Soviet life. They find a set of lakes west of the southern Urals, a region of marsh and pine near the industrial city of Chelyabinsk. Trains can reach it. Rivers feed it. The woods hide it. A code is assigned, Chelyabinsk-40. A fence is drawn on the ground where no line appears on any public map. Construction begins in late 1945 and accelerates in 1946. This is a city built under a stopwatch. At its center, the Mayak Production Association, Mayak meaning lighthouse, an ironic name for a place not meant to be seen, will hold the reactors and the radiochemical plants. The earliest buildings are temporary, barracks, mud streets covered with cimbers, kitchens that never quite stop steaming. Workers pour in from every direction, specialists recruited from institutes, soldiers and engineers demobilized from the war, peasants drawn by the promise of higher rations, prisoners in striped jackets guarded by men with dogs, and German prisoners of war used as skilled labor in everything from brick kilns to machine shops. The population of a town that does not exist swells by thousands in a year. Inside the fence, life takes on the rhythm of a place suspended between wartime urgency and scientific daring. Passes, propulsions, control movement. Letters home are censored. The address is a number, mailbox 40, P.O. Box 40, or later Chelyabinsk-45. So even the people receiving the envelopes cannot know where their relatives live. Yet for those accepted as permanent staff, the closed city offers unusual privileges by Soviet standards. Better food, a cinema with new films, schools for the children of engineers and technicians, warm apartments with radiators that kick in winter, and streetlights that stay on after midnight. The citizens pay for these comforts with silence. At the core of the complex, engineers assemble something the country has never built at scale: a plutonium production reactor. The machine is deceptively simple in concept and brutally difficult in execution. Natural uranium, metallic rods, must be stacked through a mountain of ultra-pure graphite blocks. The graphite must be free of impurities that capture neutrons. The uranium must be cast and machined to exact tolerances. The cooling water must circulate through thousands of channels without leaking. The control rods must lower fast enough to choke the chain reaction in an emergency. Every bolt, every instrument, every seam must be engineered, built, and tested by people racing the calendar. There is precedent to learn from. The first controlled chain reaction in the USSR, the F1 reactor in Moscow, proved the physics. But here in the Urals, the scale is far larger, the heat higher, the stakes sharper. Among the men in quilted coats walking the catwalks above the graphite pile is a bearded physicist with a sailor's cap and a notebook always in his hand. Igor Kurchatov, the scientific head of the Soviet nuclear effort. He moves between Moscow and the Urals like a switch tying circuits together, speaking to designers in one town, watching pump tests in another, measuring a reactor's heartbeat in this one. The first of Mayak's production reactors, known simply as A, approaches completion in the spring of 1948. In the control room, the panel is mounted with black bakelite dials, needle meters, and switches with red covers. The air smells of oil and hot dust. When the final checks are complete, technicians begin feeding the uranium slugs into the graphite. The counters tick. Neutron flux rises. There is a moment when everything becomes very quiet. Not in the room, but in the minds of the men watching, when the mathematics moves from paper into the world, and the reactor goes critical. The date is June 1948. Within days, the reactor's power climbs. Within months, fuel elements are cooling in deep pools, ready for their chemical journey. Plutonium does not come directly from a reactor as a convenient metal. It must be dissolved from irradiated uranium, precipitated, purified, and refined through a sequence of glove boxes and shielded cells, where chemists work behind thick glass using remote manipulators. The first kilograms of Soviet plutonium emerge in the spring of 1949, like a secret sunrise, silvery, poisonous, and valuable beyond price. Couriers carry it away under guard. By August 29, 1949, at a test site in Kazakhstan, the Soviet Union detonated its first nuclear device. The design is an implosion-type bomb, paralleling the American Fat Man. The plutonium at its core was born in the graphite of Reactor A in Chelyabinsk-40 and separated in Mayak's chemical plants. Photographs from the tower show a weapon that looks, to the untrained eye, like a dull sphere with protruding eyes. To the trained eye, it shows something else: parity. In a world with two nuclear powers instead of one, everything changes. For the workers inside the fence, there is no public celebration. They return to their shifts. The city grows. More reactors rise. AV series units with higher power, more efficient cooling, and better throughput. Radiochemical plants expand. A reactor tailored for tritium production joins the complex. Waste tanks, great steel and concrete vessels, go into the ground. Above them, the forest regrows. The snow falls in winter as if nothing below is warm. Secrecy has a momentum of its own. Chelyabinsk-40 stays off maps printed for public use. Buses that arrive carry only numbers. Trains with mysterious cargo slip in and out at night. New residents take oaths. Old residents receive briefings. Everyone knows the rules. If someone asks where you work, you are a machinist at a factory with no name. If someone asks where you live at a mailbox. Inside the apartment blocks, life is ordinary in texture and extraordinary in setting. Children skate on frozen ponds. A brass band plays in the square on holidays. At the cinema, newsreels show tractors in fields and ships in storms, but never reactors or radiochemical halls. Weddings are toasted with vodka, poured from flasks held by hands faintly dry from chemical fumes. In kitchens, women trade recipes for potato pies and discuss school assignments that describe geography without revealing the geography they inhabit. Yet, even in this city of competence and achievement, risk accumulates like steam behind a valve. In the earliest years, liquid waste from radiochemical processing is discharged into a nearby river system, a practice later halted as radiation monitoring reveals contaminated floodplains and villages downstream. Evacuations occur in stages, some publicly for economic reasons, others quietly. Families move, sometimes more than once, learning not to ask whether their headaches are from work or from worry. Safety improves in fits and starts. Rules tighten. Monitoring grows more sophisticated. But the pressure to produce never truly eases. On a September afternoon in 1957, one of the buried tanks containing high-level radioactive waste failed. The cooling system that should have kept it from overheating had not done its job. The compounds inside dry, heat, and finally detonate. The sound is a dull, subterranean concussion. Earth lifting, air compressing, then rain of soil and concrete dust. A plume rises and drifts east-northeast on the wind. Over hours and days, a long, narrow swath of countryside becomes contaminated. A trace you cannot see on a map because the map does not admit the city exists. Villages are evacuated, sometimes quickly, sometimes after farmers have already brought in the harvest. Troops build new fences deep in the countryside where there were none before. Trucks spray water on roads to keep dust down. For years, the event will be known outside only by rumor, a catastrophe referred to by the name of the nearest ordinary town, Kyshtym, because saying Mayak or Chelyabinsk-40 is admitting a secret. Inside the closed city, the work continues. The explosion is a disaster, but the program cannot stop. Reactors are repaired and upgraded. Waste practices are altered. New procedures implemented. And the system, ever more complex, ever more tightly guarded, restarts. In January 1958, a separate criticality accident during reprocessing will injure workers in a radiochemical line. In the years after, safety doctrine matures, instrumentation improves, and standard operating procedures grow thick as books. The city adapts by doing what it has always done, compartmentalizing risk and keeping its promises, to produce, to protect, to remain invisible. For those who live in Chelyabinsk-40, identity is a layered thing. Officially, they are not residents of any city. Practically, they are citizens of a place more tightly administered than the capital. They can travel only with permission. Their relatives, when invited to visit, must pass through checkpoints and return with stories that are snapshots. A lake sparkling in summer, a cafeteria with fresh bread, a souvenir pin with an anchor and a lighthouse that somehow says everything and nothing. The paradox of the closed city is that its people are both highly privileged and profoundly restricted. They build new sports halls, teach music, host chess tournaments, and then, on Monday morning, put on white coats and climb stairs lined with yellow and black triangles. A closed city is more than a fence. It is a method of organizing reality. The Soviet Union builds several, each tied to a strategic program: nuclear weapons, submarines, missiles. Chelyabinsk-40 is among the earliest and most emblematic. It shapes careers and families, pulls talent inward, and only reluctantly lets it go. Children who grow up here learn quickly how to talk and how not to talk, what to tell teachers, what to omit in letters to cousins in open cities, which words to underline in textbooks, and which words to leave underlined only in their minds. They become engineers, physicists, chemists, machinists, and doctors. Many stay. Some leave and never say exactly where they left from. Meanwhile, the country around them changes. The bomb they helped enable expands into a family of designs: improved fission weapons, boosted devices, and the first two-stage thermonuclear tests. Production scales up, then diversifies to support warheads for missiles and torpedoes. The Cold War acquires its strange stability, a balance of terror enforced by physics and maintained by people who go to work each day behind walls to ensure those weapons remain more a promise than a use. In 1961, at a different design center, an unimaginably large device is tested above an Arctic archipelago. The world watches the mushroom cloud through filtered lenses. Inside Chelyabinsk-45, the city's later code name, radio operators hear the official announcements and briefly allow themselves a private pride mixed with unease. They provided materials. Others did the calculations. A pilot dropped the bomb from a plane built by still others. The chain is long and complicated. Every link believes it is necessary. No link can see the whole. By the 1970s and 80s, the city's streets felt established. Trees planted by the first generation are tall enough to throw real shade. Apartment blocks receive new coats of paint. A scientist who arrived as a junior engineer becomes a section head with a dacha by a lake cleared of stumps by his friends and children in the summers of 1962 and 63. People fish. They pick mushrooms. They take photographs that they cannot publish. The city builds memorials for the war dead and for the accidents no one officially mentions. They write dates on plaques, then cover those dates with phrasing that says less than it means. Secrecy loosens only at the very end of the Soviet period. The catastrophe of 1957 is acknowledged. Epidemiologists publish studies. Journalists visit with escorts. Maps acquire a new dot where before there was only forest. The world learns the name Ozersk. Former residents speak openly about their childhoods in a place whose postcards were once printed without captions. The balance of the story changes. Triumph and cost lie side by side on a page that was previously blank. What is Chelyabinsk-40 in the wider story of the 20th century? It is a city that embodies the paradox of the age. That immense human energy and expertise were mobilized to make not bridges or libraries, but the material for weapons whose power to deter lay in their power to destroy. It is also a proof of capacity, of industrial mobilization and scientific will, of logistics under extreme constraints, of the ability to build a metropolis from nothing and keep it hidden in plain sight. And it is a place where ordinary human lives carried on under extraordinary conditions, where a metallurgist worried about her son's grades while checking the hardness of an alloy plate, where a radiochemist played violin in the house orchestra on Saturdays and handled remote manipulators on Mondays, where a guard found a poem in a magazine and copied it into a notebook before walking the perimeter in boots 2 sizes too large. If we listen carefully in the archives and in the testimonies, we can still hear the city's daily sounds. The thump of a reactor's circulation pumps, the clatter of dishes in a canteen just after noon, the hiss as a chemist opens a nitrogen purge on a glove box, the whistle that marks the end of a shift and the beginning of a walk home under a sky that, whatever else the city is, still shows the same polar stars. The legacy of Chelyabinsk-40 is complicated, because it must be. Without it, the first Soviet bomb would have had no core. The arms race would have been asymmetric. The world might have followed a different, perhaps more dangerous path. With it, the USSR achieved nuclear parity and paid a price in risk, contamination, and secrecy that echoes in the memory of the Urals and in the lives of those who worked there. Both truths fit inside the same fence. Today, some fences remain. The modern name is public, Ozersk, and the existence of the Mayak complex is no longer denied. Yet access is still restricted, procedures still classified, and the habit of measured speech still part of the culture. The city, though more visible, is not simply open. In that sense, the 20th century lingers. When we try to see Chelyabinsk-40 clearly, we see more than a hidden dot on an old map. We see the convergence of fear and ambition, of science and state power, of private aspirations carried out in public silence. We see a city that never asked to be famous and became one of the most consequential, unknown places of its time. The trucks at the beginning of our story leave by the same road they came, their tracks quickly filled with wind-blown snow. Behind the fence, the watchtowers gleam under a low winter sun. In the control room, indicator needles quiver and settle. A duty engineer makes a note in a logbook, a date, a figure, a tiny correction to a temperature drift, and then clicks the cap back onto his pen. Somewhere in the city, a child opens a school atlas and looks at the Urals. There is a blank space where home should be. He traces it anyway with his finger, learning the outline of a secret the map cannot name. That is Chelyabinsk-40, a metropolis born in urgency, made of equations and concrete, inhabited by tens of thousands who signed their names next to commitments that would last a lifetime. A city that taught the world to measure distance not only in kilometers, but also in secrets kept, risks taken, and the long shadow cast by power forged where no one was supposed to look.